Dr. Jason will continue with the second session on problem research formulation. And Dr. Jason and Miss Michelle will continue with the third session on literature review, writing, and publishing. Once again, my gratitude to the host. It's good to be here again to share with you something that I like to do, my colleagues and I have been passionate about. Again, this is me. I just like to show you the quotes. There are two quotes there. Number one, try not to become a man of success, but rather try to become a man of value. I mean, success is important, but many times success is something relative, okay? So we have to continue learning, growing. We are not comparing ourselves with others. We just want to make sure we make progress. I hope today I am better than who I was last week. It's a continual learning process, and at the same time, we want to create value. If it is an individual success, even though it is good, it is not good enough. We want our colleagues, we want our students to be successful as well. And that leads to the second quote: happiness is only real when shared. I hope this afternoon, not only Jason, Michelle, and I are here to share with you about topic selection, problem research formulation, literature review, writing, and publishing. We hope we are also here to share happiness, okay? We hope our sharing will stimulate your interest. Research is challenging. It is by no means easy. However, if we have a learning attitude, it will be a rewarding process. Challenging but fun. Even though there are difficulties, but the process, the learning process is rewarding. Now let me begin with this. Is research actually fun? I don't know if you have ever put these two words together. In English, there is a word called oxymoron, meaning these two words can never be together. But for me, fun is a big part of doing research. I don't have time to go through the details. I mean, you have the link there. Again, after the seminar, after the webinar, I will send the slides to the host, to the organizer. I mean, you will have all the materials needed for your future reference. Now, my point here is, if you look at this particular slide, whenever we have curiosity, whenever we have that attitude to inquire for more, that actually is the very essence of research, okay? Have you ever asked yourself, why? Have you ever wondered why this happens? This is actually the essence of research. If you look at, I don't know how many of you have read the book or watched the movie Alice in the Wonderland. There is actually a saying, if you see the words in yellow, curiouser and curiouser, meaning you become more and more curious. There are so many interesting things, fascinating things, things that remain unanswered, things that require more answers. These are the things that we continue to do research on. Why? Because we believe by knowing the truths, by knowing the realities, we will be able to do something, and that would eventually translate into something beneficial to the community we are living in, the community we are serving. Anyway, so I just want to impress all of you again. I mean, apart from participants from the Philippines, early on I saw names and they introduce themselves from other countries. You may have different backgrounds. You are MBA students, master students, PhD students, or you might be a lecturer. I think this very essence is still very important. And many times I told my juniors, especially those who just graduated from their master's degree or PhD, you must be careful because yes, it is a milestone. Graduation is a big thing. Completion of PhD, you have every right to celebrate. You are, rightly so, but this does not mean it is the end of learning. Okay, learning only gets started, and the journey is still long, and that's why that essence, that curiosity, that sense of inquisitivity, to inquire more, that we have to keep for a long time to keep us going. When we were young, we were curious about so many things: how birds fly, how flowers grow. Even though I hold a PhD, I don't have all the answers. Okay, many of you would be smarter than me in many ways. But again, that again explains the very essence of doing research. The curiosity, to know, to get, to the bottom of the issue, and this learning process is fun. Okay. Now, again, I don't know whether this is really from Albert Einstein, but Google tells me so. So anyway, I will just put it here and show you. After a certain high level of technical skill is achieved, science and art tend to coalesce. I'm sorry if I pronounced that word wrongly. In aesthetics, plasticity, and form, the greatest scientists are always artists as well. Okay, I'm not Albert Einstein. I don't assume to be one, but let me boldly interpret. And that is, when you do research, it is both a science and an art. Why science? Because when we do research, it is a scientific process. It is a systematic process where we have to do things. For example, we plan our research, we design our research, we design our instrument, we collect our data, we analyze our data. It is a systematic process which requires rigor. And we have to make sure the data is valid, it is reliable, and whatever we come up with, it would help the people concerned to make informed decision. It is a scientific process, no doubt about it. At the same time, however, it is also an art. It is also an art. You are writing a storybook. It is as if you are on a theater and there is a script where we have to play our role. And even though, there is a script for us to follow, at the same time, in the process, there are many instances where we have to exercise flexibility. We have to know how to craft the story. We have to observe things around us. Yes, we know this has been happening, but could there be something else? Could there be something more? It is something that requires art. It is something artistic. And again, because it is both science and art, I find research fun. And you may ask me, what has this got to do with the topic, with this particular session? Now, to come up with a research topic, okay, you should not be content with what is given to you only. sometimes we ask our supervisors, sometimes we ask the experts, what can I do? Do you have any topic for me? This is not wrong. I mean, you can always do that, but you cannot take away your role as a scholar, as a researcher. You have to ask why. You have to ask why not. You may not be able to challenge your supervisor today, but you should be able to challenge your supervisor today, next year. When I say challenge, it doesn't mean you challenge him in a negative way. You challenge him as a scholar. It is a scholarly discussion, scholarly debate, where you are able to put some thoughts together. You don't disagree for the sake of disagreement. You don't argue with nothing, with no concrete evidence. You are able to put forth evidence. You are able to string together lines of justification, argument. Why not? Okay, so this is important when we generate research topic, when we select research topic. We will see later why all these are important. Now, in front of you, this is a very simple mathematical solution. If you were to move just one match to fix the equation, what would it be? You don't have to unmute yourself. You can look at the equation. So it could be 8 minus 4 equal to 4, right? It could be 0 plus 4 equal to 4. It could be 5 plus 4 equal to 9. The same formula, by moving one match, you are able to fix the formula, to fix the equation. Now, most of us, we are trained to think this way. Nothing wrong, it's good, but why not this? Why not this? 6 minus 4 is not equal to 4. Why not? Okay, because this is also correct. In the past, there are many interesting topics. And because of this why and why not, people begin to see something different. For example, if you do a topic on brain engagement, why not brain disengagement? If you do a topic on value creation, why not value destruction? If you do a topic on how selfie would attract people to buy things, why not a study about how selfie discourages people to buy things? Why and why not? Okay, so again, this is the reason why you have to keep pushing yourselves. Again, like what this Steve Jobs said earlier, to keep yourself hungry, foolish all the time, because there is so much out there for us to know, and hopefully, again, we can translate knowledge into something useful to the real world. Now, we have to think inside, and also we have to think outside the box. So we have no time to get all of you to tell me what your answers are, but I would expect different people to come up with different answers, because when you see this picture, many of my colleagues, their first reaction would be, this is the problem with the students today. They don't like to sit at the front rows. Why? Because they are afraid to be picked, and they have that perception that those who think they are clever, they will sit at the front rows. No, they have different thoughts. If my grandfather, of course he's not here, but anyway, just assume if my grandfather, saw this picture, he would have interpreted it differently, because different situation, different ages, different generations, different interpretation. Today, when we look at it, we will interpret it differently. Now, some people, they actually defend the students. They say, no, you don't blame the students for sitting from third row onward, because by sitting on the third row and above, it is actually a comfortable height for them to focus on what the lecturer has to teach. Now, can you see the same phenomenon? It could be interpreted differently. It could be interpreted differently. Even though research is a scientific process, yes, no doubt about it, but you cannot make it mechanistic. You cannot make it mechanistic. There is an artistic part in research process where you exercise your observation, you exercise your imagination, and perhaps by doing that, you see something else. Your research becomes something more novel, and the originality of your research is significantly improved. It may not be something new, yet it is something original. Okay, today, to come up with a topic which is entirely new, it is very rare. It is very, very rare. Okay, if you do a topic and you claim this topic has never been done before, you must be very careful with this statement. Okay, because so many have been done, so much has been done. When we say we do something new, when we talk about originality, it does not have to be something entirely new. It is new because of new perspective. It could be an old problem, but you look at it from another angle, or you integrate something, or you provide greater insights to an existing issue. Again, this requires you to think inside. It also requires you to think outside the box. So my conclusion here is you have to think inside out. You have to know your material. At the same time, you have to allow yourself to think beyond. If you think beyond without understanding the literature, then at best you become a dreamer. Nothing wrong with it, but you are a scholar. You must be familiar with the literature. You must be familiar with the domain knowledge. But at the same time, you do not want to be predetermined by what you learn. You want to see what else. Could there be something else? So think inside out. Inside out. All right? Be familiar with what has been done before. At the same time, think outside the box. So that would allow you to come up with a better research topic. Again, it is a fun process. Now, again, let me give you a few more quotes before we go into all the the details. If what you choose to do has got to be something, what you choose to do has got to be something that you are passionate about, because otherwise you won't have the perseverance to see it through. So the key word here is passionate. Another word for it, if I may borrow, is interest. You must be interested. Now, by the way, Michelle told me that my name, Hiram, is borrow in Tagalog. Is that correct? Anyway, so something new for me.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so that's interesting. It has to be something that you are passionate about, or else you will not have the perseverance to see it through, to get it done. People rarely succeed unless they have fun in what they are doing. And also, there's nothing more rewarding than giving back and making a difference in the lives of people in this great community. My dear friends, I know all these points may not be directly related to research topic, but I would like to tell you they are actually. I just want to impress you that we should never forget the essence of research, to inquire things, the sense of curiosity, and don't Don't just do it for promotion, even though promotion is important. Don't just do it for title, even though title is important. I tell my friends, you can call me Hiram. I don't mind at all, because if you call me doctor, if you call me professor, everyone, there are so many people having the same name, then it will be quite confusing as well. I'm perfectly fine. Okay, it's perfectly okay with me, because doing research is mainly driven by passion, by interest, by the commitment to disseminate knowledge, the commitment to use our little effort to make the community slightly a better place to live. Even though we can't do much, we are just a drop. But if we do that collectively, I believe we can make a greater change. Research is fun. All right. Now, how would you select your research topic? Should you talk to your supervisor? Should you check with your, should you ask yourself what is your interest? Should you check your background? For example, I'm a lawyer, I'm a doctor, I'm a businessman, I'm a banker, or maybe my father is a businessman, my mom is a retailer, background. Why? Because if you do something related to your interests, most likely you will be motivated to do it. If you do something related to your professional background, your qualification, something which your family does, you have an upper hand because you know the issues, you know what is happening better than the others. And because of the connection your parents have, because the connection your relatives have, it becomes relatively easy for you to get data, for example. Now, all these are practical consideration that you should have when you decide what topic you should do for your research. Yesterday, in fact, for the last few days, I don't know how many students I met. So they told me about their research topics. Now, the common issue is they may have something interesting to do. Yet, normally what happens is they do not know what may happen later. They have come up with something interesting. They believe this topic is interesting. They like this topic. Nothing wrong. The issue is they do not see what will come later. They do not see what they got themselves into because they don't have the experience. So as a supervisor, many times we need to guide them. So there are situations where the research topic is fantastic, yet it is not feasible. Yet you will struggle to collect data from the respondents. So these are the things you have to consider, because if you don't consider all this, yes, your research topic is wonderful. 3 months later, 6 months later, 1 year later, when you realize you have the problem, you encounter challenges, then it might be difficult to overcome. Okay, so I cannot tell you which topic is correct. I can only tell you in general that topic selection is not something that you do at that particular moment only. It requires forethought. It requires discussion. It requires observation. It requires reading. It requires you to talk to your supervisors and even practitioners, something which I will point out later. Okay, advice, suggestion. All right, so these are the things that I'm going to talk about. Now, this is again a sharing session for roughly 50 minutes. So I don't want to give you too many words. Now, the question here is, where do you get the ideas from? Okay. Sometimes my friends are amazed. How come you have so many ideas? When I being here today, in fact, I have come up with some ideas what research can be done as well. So there are many things that you can do. Again, it's about curiosity. So where do I get my ideas from? Okay, this picture, I get my ideas from my team members. That's why I'm glad Dr. Jason Cham is here with me today. Also, even though I am an academic, I also join some business events because you get some good ideas from practitioners, from business people. Also, many times I spend my time alone observing, thinking, and reflecting. Okay, I mean, this seminar today is not about publication. I can tell you many papers, the ideas are originated from these particular moments. Okay, think, reflect. What else? I like to meet editors. I like to meet experts. Talk to them. Okay, of course during pandemic, during pandemic when our movement is restricted, you can still talk to them online. You can email to them. You know, you will get good ideas from these experts, from these editors. Also, I like to talk and work with government bodies. This group of people, they are from the Ministry of Health. Also, you can present papers, you listen to presentation, you network, you attend workshop, you attend seminar. Again, these are the places, these are the occasions where you can collect so many ideas. Okay. Now, my friends, ideas many times are in the form of inspiration. If you don't write down immediately, if you don't jot down immediately, you will likely forget. Even if you did not forget, you will lose that sensation. You will lose that inspiration. I know this topic is something that I wanted to do, but for some reason, I forget why it is so important. Okay, so ideas can come and go like inspiration. You have to write down, you have to jot down, or you, up to you, do memo or write on the tablet, up to you. We have all the technologies available. Okay, if you try to memorize, if you try to remember, you can, but I know I can't. Just take note that you know, ideas come from everywhere, everywhere. Also, I like to travel because again, when you travel, you meet people, you get so many ideas. You know, you see things from different perspectives because different people, different culture, different setting, different background, different mindset, they may say something differently. And from there, you see ideas again. Also, I like to work with my students, okay, even though they are my students. But during discussion, they may say something foolish, and that foolish discussion, so to speak, generates ideas. Okay, that's why I told my students, never, you know, despise yourself. What you need to do, you must put effort in. You must always try. If you make mistakes, mistakes are part of the process, and you have to learn from there. Okay, you have to maintain the right attitude, and you are willing to learn. And many times when I discuss with my students, directly, indirectly, you get ideas. Okay, and finally, of course, this slide is not comprehensive. That's why on the slide I put the words, some examples. It does not mean these are all the ideas, you know, the origins. There are many, many more. Okay, but these are some. The last one, you have to do it, and that is you have to read. Okay, you have to read. Ideas come from reading. When you read, think about what you just read. Again, ideas will come. All right. Now, I will, like I said, I will give you the slides, so don't worry. You can look at the slides, and I also give you the link so that you can read the whole thing. But let me just go through some of these points. Number one, be passionate. When you turn your idea into a topic that you want to do, make sure you are passionate about it. Okay, you are interested about it. It is related to your interests. It is related to your background. It is something that you will do for the next 5 to 10 years. Then why not? Okay. All right, and there are a few things. For example, number 5, network and maintain breadth of knowledge as you develop depth in your inquiry. Okay, this is what I said earlier. When you consider what topics you want to do, on one hand, you go into literature. On the other hand, you talk to different people. Okay, you want the breadth of knowledge. You also want the depth of knowledge. You read more. At the same time, you talk to professors, you talk to experts, you talk to key informants, you talk to directors, managers, in order to know the subject matter even more. Okay, balanced reading, thinking, and doing. I think I've said it many times. Be iterative, be creative. Okay, build incrementally. Now, this is something, again, it might contradict what I said earlier. Earlier, I said ideas can come in the form of inspiration. Okay, sometimes it comes to you in a rapid way, like a rainfall. Wow, you see something. Yes, this is something that I can do. Sometimes it happens that way, but it also happens incrementally. Why? Because once you have something, even though it is a small idea, you have to build it incrementally. Okay, think about it. What else can I do? Can I do it this way? Can I do it that way? This is how you build your topic incrementally. Okay, so on one hand, you want something inspirational. On the other hand, we must do our homework. We have to build it incrementally. These two aspects you cannot neglect. I mean, you look at our world today. We have this what we call disruptive technology. Things that come in rapidly. They change how things are done, but still things have to develop incrementally. Okay, same goes to your research ideas and the selection of your research topic. All right. All the points are important. Again, this is for your reference because, as I said earlier, we are different in many ways. Go through the list and see what works for you. All right. Now, when you have some ideas based on your interests, based on your background, or maybe this idea comes from your supervisor, brainstorm the ideas. Brainstorm, okay? And then from there, you have to learn to read and understand the literature. Again, read. You have to read. When you read, at the beginning, you may not know where to begin with. As you begin, then you will encounter another problem, and that is you don't know where to stop. Again, this is the process where and when you learn how to be broad and how to be narrow. Okay, so this is the process. Again, like what I said earlier, you have to learn to read to understand what has been done. At the same time, you want to observe the reality. You want to talk to people in order to make sure your topic is something interesting, something feasible, something that you can do, and something that you can contribute. And eventually that study warrants a master degree, a PhD degree, or maybe a publication in top journal. Okay. Now, based on the topic that you choose, you can come up with keywords. Why is this important? Because when you identify these keywords, then you can utilize Google Scholar, for example, to search for relevant articles. Okay, or you can go to any publishers, Emerald Insight, Wiley, Taylor and Francis. When you identify the keywords, for example, job satisfaction, for example, employee retention, for example, consumer loyalty, for example, online learning. When you identify these keywords, then you will be able to utilize online resources to find the relevant articles. Okay. Now, this is difficult for me to teach you to do it. The only secret is you have to do it. Okay, so that you become familiar with this process. okay, how to turn idea into topic, how to identify keywords from the topic, and how to use online resources and the keywords to find the right articles. All right. So this will help you to select what you want to do for your research. All right. So this is just another checklist. Basically, I've already said this. It's best that you select a topic related to your interests. That will be the best. Of course, maybe we don't have choice because we are doing something that our supervisor wants us to do because we are under scholarship. There are situations like that. You have to build your interest. Okay, you have to build your interest because this is something that you have to do for some time. All right, organizational support, ethical issues, relevance of the study, contribution to the field. This is important because again, whatever you do, you must make sure it is up to the level, whatever you are doing and aiming for. Now, this is a checklist. Again, this is not a rule. R-U-L-E. It is not a rule. It is a template. It is a reference. You can put here what is important to you. Okay, and you may have 3 topics. So on the checklist, just check which topic fulfills all the criteria. So this checklist may suggest that this particular topic is something that you should do. Okay, so it's really up to you. So again, these are all the resources where you can get the ideas from and where you can confirm, you can determine, you can decide what you want to do for your research. Okay. Again, I will send the slides to you. These are the 2 videos you can watch later. All right. It is not because of time. Huh? I purposely put it here so that you can watch later, not during the seminar. The webinar. Oops. In this video. All right. Again, this is something I've already said. Prior knowledge. Okay. Go into the literature and also observation. Exercise your observation. Look at the real world. Okay. Again, if I may, I would change this to your topic. Okay. Before you decide your topic, knowledge. What is the existing knowledge? What is your prior knowledge? And also exercise observation. This is, again, the combination of science and art in research. All right. Again, this is just another checklist for you to make sure when you select a topic, ask yourself, can you get it done? Ask yourself, do you have access to data? Ask yourself, what is the nature of decision? Is it for an organization? Is it a pure research? Is it an applied research? Okay. And also ask, does it involve any cost? Do you have to fly to many places to collect data? Do you have someone there to collect data from you? If you don't want to fly, if you want to use online, is online appropriate? Is online the best way to collect valid data? All these you have to consider before you decide your topic. Okay, so in a nutshell, my friends, something interesting, something feasible, you can get it done. And also you have the required resources. You have the literature, you have the budget, you have the time, you have the support, you have respondents, eligible to complete your survey. In general, these are the 3 things. Of course, different textbooks may give you different criteria. So this is, again, just for your reference. Okay, I think that's about it from me. I cannot give you, an answer, but this is how you generate ideas, how you select topics. And this is just an example telling you that when you select a topic, don't lose the big picture. Yes, you are feeding the fish, but remember, you are actually treating the water as well. If the water is not clean, and if you overfeed the fish will die. Okay, don't be too obsessed with your topic. Think beyond that. It could be something else. Don't overprotect your topic. Let other people criticize. There could be something else that you overlook. All right. Okay, I should stop with a few more slides very quickly. This is one online resource question where you can type your possible topic and see, there is something for you to refer to. All right, something for you to try. See, for example, job satisfaction. My goodness, books, journals, so many for you to refer to. Okay, you click and you will be able to access. Of course, you must utilize Google. I'm not from Google company, but I mean, thanks to Google, Google really helps me a lot. So these are the things that you should know how to use in order to find the right articles, all right? Again, these are the things you can consider, okay? How to get ideas, how to get topics. Read editorial. Read systematic review paper. Why? Because usually the authors, so by reading one paper, you may see a lot of ideas, a lot of potential topics. Also, read the recent articles. When you read articles, you can go straight to the end of the article, read the limitation of the thesis or the limitation of the articles. Why? Because they will tell you what can be done for future studies. Okay? Read business magazine, work with practitioners, join relevant social groups, including on Facebook, any relevant social groups to get ideas, to get topics, to get comments. Conduct a focus group discussion, why not? Tweaking the topic via searching. As you search for information, you tweak your keyword and you search again. Okay, so it is an iterative process. Consider your commitment, your strength. Again, it is a long-term process. You need to do something that you are motivated to do. And this is interesting because this is actually from operations management. Ask yourself 5 times, why? Okay, if it is something significant, then you should be able to ask why, to convince you that, yes, go ahead, proceed. This should be a good topic. It should be something interesting, and we should expect to get something insightful, all right? This is not the webinar today, but another very good approach is you have to write paper and submit, because you will get review. Even if your paper is rejected, you can read the reviews. You can learn a lot. You get ideas. And also, it will help you to tweak your topic, to improve your topic, to make it better, to make it more researchable. Again, some links for you to consider. Okay, editorial, systematic review paper. We don't have time to go through all this. Basically, this is just an example how idea, topic eventually become a paper. Another example, again, about Sarawak, where I'm from, how idea, topic, and eventually the paper came about, all right? So it is process. It did not happen in the midnight when suddenly someone from above, gave me something. Maybe it would, but again, it is something incremental. You have to build on it. It is a systematic process. At the same time, it requires a lot of observation, critical thinking, reflection. Again, another paper, how idea, topic, and paper came about. Okay, this is something I would encourage you to join, a bit of promotion. Allow me for another 30 seconds. If you'd like to get more ideas, if you'd like to consider how you would improve your topics, especially those in tourism and management, this is the first one. This is a forum you may want to join, okay? You have the link here for you to register. It will be on 24th of July, all right? So again, these slides will be made available to you. Thank you so much for listening to me. My apology for using more time. My apology to Dr. Jason and Ms. Michelle. I pass the floor back to the speaker, the host. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Hiram. Thank you so much for making us realize that research is challenging, but it is really fun. Thank you so much. And sometimes the research title is fantastic, but we have to check if this is also feasible. And I realized from your lecture that it really requires a lot of thoughts, discussions, observations, and of course, a lot of readings. Thank you so much for that.
You wrap
And
up well.
I would like to remind all I'd like to remind all the participants that if you have questions, please leave it in our chat box here in Zoom meeting room. And to those watching via Facebook Live, please leave at the comment section. And we will attend to your questions after the lecture of our second resource speaker. That is Dr. Jason Cham Tan. Dr. Jason. Okay. So we actually have some questions, but we will just reserve it later. Thank you again, Dr. Hiram.
Thank you.
And this time, we will turn you over to our next speaker, Dr. Jason Cham.
Hello, good afternoon, everyone. Great to be
Good
back to
afternoon, sir.
Philippines. The last trip when I went to Philippines is last February, if I'm not mistaken, before this COVID pandemic issue. Okay, great to be back. All right. Today I've been informed actually my audience would be most to the MBA students, but eventually it has been attended by quite numbers of academics and also some research program students. But anyway, I try to make the things as interesting as possible. So because I'm going to use my stylus later on, if you all don't mind, I might need to switch off my webcam. All right. So I will be sharing my screen with all of you right now. All right. Okay. Sorry for a bit delay due to technical issues. All right. Okay. So basically, I'm not here to teach you what to do when it comes to problem statement as well as literature review later on, but I'm here to share with you what I've known about this area and what are the tips and tricks that you can bring home, especially for those who are thinking of starting your research. This sharing itself, I hope that it can really assist you when come up with the good problem statement. All right. So basically, when it comes to research, before I jump straight away to problem statement, just allow me to introduce few of the key components that you must have for your thesis, for your, some of you call it dissertation in your institution. So basically, we will have in our thesis, in particularly in our chapter 1, we will have something like introductions. We will have this problem statement, then we will have our research question, research problems, so long and so forth. All right, so let me start. What is all about introductions? Introductions for a study is basically is a platform for us to introduce what we want to study all about. It's not going to be very, very detailed in this particular point of time, but what you need to do, you just, at least you need to brief the readers why they actually need to read the work. And at the same time, for the introductions, it is a must for you as a writer yourself to come up with the writing that can actually attract their attentions to, to expect something from you at the end of the day. So basically, before you watch a movie, for example, like Avengers, of course, before we jump straight away to the storyline of the movie itself, definitely they will introduce to you who are all these main characters, for example, this Iron Man and so on, right? So this is all the introduction is all about. So the interesting part today is always a problem statement, because problem statement is all about the entire research is all about your problem statement. If you're a salesperson, this is your product. Okay, you need to convince, okay, your reader why they need to look at your study. And this is your selling point, ladies and gentlemen. We cannot neglect this part or just simply write in the way that is convenient to us. All right. So basically, what is meant by research problem? Research problem, based on definition, is a situation or circumstance that requires a solution to be described, explained, or predicted. It is an unsatisfactory situation. Ladies and gentlemen, I highlight this point again, unsatisfactory situation that you want to confront. All right. This is something based on your curiosity. For example, when you observe something, you think that, okay, this thing it's not what it's supposed to be. So it will trigger your curiosity to know more and more. Definitely later I will share with you some of the articles that I published together with my colleagues, and that how we actually come out with this all problem statement. So problem statement eventually lead to a context what we call as a knowledge gap. Okay, knowledge gap itself basically we derive from the area that is less discussed or less being researched by other researchers. And sometimes it is inconclusive and also inconsistent. Inconsistent here means that, for example, if let's say you're studying about the relationship between a construct of A to B, all right, for example, customer satisfaction to customer loyalty, just for instance, and for learning purpose. If let's say many of the studies show you that there is a relationship between this construct, but sometimes there are also study mentions that there is no relationship. All right. So when this come to the contradictory view, then this is the time when you came in to just to confirm again what is actually all about, particularly in this scenario. And many of the researchers, when it comes to problem statement, they love to use this word. You know, no study has been conducted in this area before. Okay, this is a very bold and dangerous statement. You never know that when you mention such word, no study being conducted before. What if your examiner or a reviewer found out that some of the paper that has been published before your time that actually address the problem that you mentioned? So this could land yourself in the deep trouble. So if you want to use this kind of statement, you must be humble and be diplomatic when you come up with your statement. All right. For example, what you actually can do, you can come up with the sentence, for example, to the best knowledge as a researcher. Means that you are the researcher to your best knowledge. You found out that there is a limited evidence related to the area that you want to study. On the other hand, if let's say you already source all the information, you go through all the databases and you still couldn't find the evidence that you want to address, what you can actually do, you can again go back to the diplomatic sentence. You can actually mention that to your best knowledge of your as a researcher, there is virtually none of the study. It means that you are trying to you're trying to come up with a statement, but you're trying to be diplomatic at the same time because it's all based on your knowledge. So when someone want to blame you for certain reason, definitely they know that you already do do the best that you could in reviewing the literature as much as possible. So the next thing would be, what can be a research problem? Okay, number one is the existing issue that organization need to address. All right. On the other hand, it could be the areas that you want to improve. Like for my case in medical tourism, when I started my medical tourism research in PhD, I found that there are limited evidence that focus in this area. So I think that this is a really hot topic during that time. That is the reason why I jumped into this topic for my PhD study. And also there is also the part of theoretical and conceptual issue that we need more study to be conducted just simply because we can understand the thing better. And on another note, research question are also a basic researcher wants to answer empirically. For example, just let me share something with all of you. Let me see. Okay, let me start with this paper. Okay, this paper written together with colleagues, included Dr. Hiram as well. So what this paper tried to address is this. When we look at this, this is the topic of the title paper, Medical Tourism Destination Image and its Relationship with
Yes,
the
you
intention.
can't see the paper.
Oops, let me see.
Hi, Dr. Cham. Okay.
Sorry, can you see now?
Good.
Not yet.
Good.
Hold on.
Yep, it's good.
All right. Okay, so I continue. Okay, this is the paper that we written, if I'm not mistaken, 2 years ago. It's about medical tourism destination image and its relationship with the intention to visit. Okay, the idea we came about this paper is because the moment when we tried to initiate this paper, we found out that, you know, the destination image that often used in medical tourism are usually based on the general tourism context, which personally I think is not the right measurement for it, because medical tourism is a niche tourism. It's supposed to deserve its own measurement scale, particularly when it comes to destination image. So taking into view of these inputs and also this curiosity, so what we did as a team is we review all the literatures out there, and we found out that it's true. There is not much study that focus on medical tourism destination image exclusively. What we did in this paper, we are coming out with a new measurement scale for it, for medical tourism in particular. So from the paper itself, we argue that I will share these articles with all of you later on. So the part that I highlighted is the problem statement that we try to argue. This is the area that we found out that there are a lot of limitations, and this is something that we want to question it as a problem of the research. So therefore, the outcome of this research is we came out with a new measurement scale, particularly focused on medical tourism destination image. Of course, we've gone through the process. For example, the focus group, in-depth interviews, okay, conducted this exploratory factor analysis, confirmatory, and so on. So this is one of the scenario. And another one would be this paper, all right? This paper is actually came out based on my curiosity as well. So, okay, this paper actually is developed based on my observation back in 2012, when I want to open a saving account in Malaysia. During that particular 5 day at the bank, and when it comes to my turn, I have been informed by the bank officer that I need to wait as he is not able to process my application due to the system issue, because the system was down during that time. Out of curiosity, I asked the officer why they need the system. Can't they process it manually? All right. I have been informed that the system that they are using are connected and integrated with the headquarters and also the Central Bank of Malaysia. Therefore, all the banking activities need to be stopped until the system back online. You see, this triggered my curiosity, and I went home and I read about it. I go to, of course, our Mr. Google, and then I go to download some of the journals, and I noticed that the system that they mentioned, it is known as knowledge management system. According to the past study, in particular the literature, right? What it mentions in the in theory is something like this. For example, the system that I use is knowledge management system. Okay, all right. So I just want to understand what are the factors actually trigger knowledge management system, the success of it. So I put it another S here, knowledge management system success. All right. So based on the founding theory by DeLong and McLean, they mentions that intention to use. Please pardon me for my Da Vinci Code of writing. Okay, another one would be the user satisfaction.
Jason, we can't see what you are writing.
Oh, okay. Let me see. Hold on. All right, can you all see now?
All good.
Okay, thank you. All right. Okay, back to the discussion earlier. Okay, so when I revisit the theory, I found out that intention to use and also user satisfaction play a very important role in determining the success of knowledge management system. But the problem here is this: when I talked to this bank officer, they eventually have no choice. They must use the system to perform their job. So when I read about this theory about this knowledge management system success, then I realized that whatever they argued previously, for example, intention to use, is not applicable to this context. Why I say so? Because when we try to understand the word intention, intention here means if you want to use it, you just use it. If you don't want to, doesn't matter. And after all, it's based on voluntary basis. All right. The question here is this, ladies and gentlemen. Do the bank officer have the privilege not to use the system in performing their job? The answer is definitely no, because they really need to use the system to perform the job. You see, based on a simple argument, then I started to question the theory. I see whatever being proposed by this model, the founding theory is not true, whereby I suggested that the intention to use is not applicable to our current context. So therefore, I propose in my research that the intention to use shouldn't be considered, particularly in certain industries, something like our bank, okay, in our education as well, because I believe that all the academics, when you teach at the university, definitely you need to lock into the certain system to share the teaching material with your students. So sometimes when we look, this is how I just trigger a little bit. I identify the weakness of the theory, then I question it. So by questioning it, it make this paper publish. So what I did is, this is my argument. For example, I highlighted it. I mentioned very clear that I question the Dillon and McLean model. For example, if you don't mind, I'll read it out. For example, this part, when KMS user are
Jason,
made
we can't see the article. No
hold
worries.
on.
I'm here to assist you.
All right, thank you. Can you see now, Hiram?
Good.
Good, okay. So this is the problem statement that I derived. Based on simple observation, curiosity, this is something that I came out. First thing first, I argue that the model may not be applicable to the banking industry, meaning to say that the early model that they proposed in the literature, because according to this Lucas 1978 and Dillon, the intentions to use should only be considered as a predictor when the adoption is on voluntary basis. But for our case here, when the KMS user are made compulsory to utilize the system, therefore, user intention to use no longer appropriate. So this is how I actually make the weakness of the past theory to become one of my problem statement. And my model itself is not very complicated, just a very straightforward model. Let me show you how it looks like. Eventually, what I did is I included the social aspect and I dropped out the intention to use in the model based on the past theory. So that is how I came out with this idea of questioning the past theory and argue it as our problem statement. Okay, so now I'm back to my slides. So this is the four key area. If you do not have your problem statement right now, doesn't matter. Like what Dr. Harum said earlier is true. You must be very curious, must be observing, observant. You need to observe the situation around you, because all these elements within you will become a good research area for you to study about. All right, so when it comes to a problem statement, remember there are three keywords that you need to know. Number one, establishing, relating, and justifying. First thing first, when it comes to establishing, you need to establish why we need to have this study. All right, you must give out the fact what is going on with the past studies. So why we should look into it. Number two, it could be relating. You must relate the problem to your study. Why? What is the problem that associated within the area that you want to investigate? For example, if you look back at what I mentioned about medical tourism, I mentioned that there are limited study or there are no study at all that focus on the destination image for medical tourism. That's number one. For the second article, I mentioned that the intention to use shouldn't be adopted particularly for the banking industry. All right. The third part, most importantly, is this word, justification. All right. Not because my name is Jason, but you have to remember this word, justification. You need to justify why you conduct this study and why you want to address this problem. Remember, in research, there is no right or wrong. As long as you are able to justify it, remember this word. Because every single examiner, every single reviewer, or even your supervisor, whatever, they definitely will give you comments from time to time. But eventually, they want to see how you react to their question. And they want to know how you justify it. The moment when you are able to justify your case, trust me one thing, you will have the positive energy, which is your confidence to defend your research idea. All right. So problem statement is also something that you need to create clearly and understandably. Try to make it simple, straightforward, and when people look at it, they understand what you want to do. All right. And you must also define the concept. For example, like my case, if I question about destination image, okay, for the medical tourism, in fact, in my argument itself, I need to explain what is happening with destination image in the past studies or in the general tourism context. So briefly, I need to tell them the background, what is going on with the past study and how my study can add value to the body of knowledge. This is something that we really need to sell. Okay, as I say earlier, problem statement is everything about your research because most of the examiner and also the reviewer, they emphasize a lot, particularly when it comes to your problem statement. Because without a good problem statement, you are not able to defend your work. All right. So the second part is, I move on to the third one. It shouldn't be something uncertain because it seems that you already know what is the problem in mind. Definitely, you must champion and highlight what is the possibility for you to go ahead and start question it and justify your case, why your study need to be conducted. All right. If you leave on something uncertain, definitely you are opening a room for someone to attack you. All right. So the fourth one, whatever it is, the problem that you try to address, it must be supported or backed up from the past studies in terms of, the evidence that you give or evidence that you included in your write-up must be proceed logically. For example, for example, if I do anything related to service quality, okay, as most of us know, service quality is developed by Parasuraman and colleagues back in 1988 using the scale of SURF-Core. But when we look at SURF-Core itself, it is measured based on perception minus expectation. That is how we actually measure SURF-Core. But throughout the process, we can see that researchers like Cronin and Taylor, in their papers in 1992 and 1993, they mention it very clear that we do not need the expectation score. So this is how scholarly debate make the things improve. The same thing goes to your case as well. If you want to argue on certain things in an academic way, you must give the evidence, what happened in the past and what you can contribute to make the things better. Of course, we are not argue like not argue as a human, but we are argue in terms of the scholarly context. This is very good in the sense that you can see advancement, particularly in the theory as well as the literature. All right, so writing a problem statement, you also need to set out different points of view because some of the researchers, when they come up with the problem statement, for example, if they focus in the hotel industry, right, they would just focus everything on that particular context. It could be good, but it could be very risky as well. For example, when you focus in one particular area, you do not know what happened outside. All right. And in this particular, when you found out that there is no study being conducted, like for instance, the relationship that you want to address, you have tendency to make a claim that your study is the first study, looking at this particular context. However, in other study, they already being addressed. For example, in retail context, the same thing that you argue is already being addressed, and this one will put you in trouble because if your examiner or reviewer found out that whatever you mentioned in the hotel industry, if the context is quite similar because retail and hotel industry both are from a service context, it would definitely trigger them to ask you more and more questions. Yes, so therefore, when you come up with your problem statement, whatever it is, you must, like what Dr. Hiram mentioned earlier, keep on reading and reading, okay? You must use what we call as the funneling approach. You must go with the broad area, try to understand what happened in the broad area, then only you move on to your focus area, which is your hotel industry context. All right, so problem statement also culminates all the possible research hypothesis and research question that you're going to formulate later on. So whatever you mentioned is in the problem statement, eventually later on, it will be translated to your research hypothesis and question. And most importantly, ladies and gentlemen, this point number 7, even though I'm totally agree that as a social science researcher, our study must be as scientific as possible. But we also cannot neglect the art part. Why I say so? Because writing is like an art. Because you are able to write in the way that it is good, is easily convince the reader, please do so. Because if you write in the way that it can convince the examiner or the reviewer, definitely they will buy your idea. All right. This is all about how we execute or how we write our problem statement in the way that on one hand, you try to contribute in terms of the body or knowledge. And the second thing, on the other hand, you want to convince your reader as well. Okay, so what are the tips and tricks? First of all, okay, you must identify one of the key points of concern. For example, I know this is one of the great challenge for many of us when we try to come up with the problem statement. But for me, usually I will use observation, curiosity to help me to come up with all this problem statement. But some of you, or many of us also, we can use the sample from the recently published paper, because when you look at some of the paper, they have a section called future research. So this future research, the researcher will propose to you what you can look into. All right. So you can use that as your argument as well. All right. So remember that we are not actually trying to challenge the theory to come up with something very, very original, because it's not easy. All right. So what we are doing is actually contribute to the certain portion of body of knowledge. We try to improvise how people view that particular context and how we can move on from there. Okay. So the next thing is for the tips, right? You need to review, and this one you must do it very often, because when you try to argue on certain things, please do review as many as literature as possible, because you won't be surprised at the end of the day, they will give you a bigger idea, a bigger picture, and also a better idea how you're going to articulate your case in your write-up later on. Okay, so make sure that you have motivations to address those problems. Try to play in a safe line. Do not come out with those bold statements like I mentioned earlier, which going to land yourself in a deep problem later on. Try to be diplomatic, but sometimes you can be confident, you can emphasize on certain things when you are very, very sure that whatever you're going to contribute is something very, very new. But eventually, before you jump into that conclusion, you must make sure that you have all the evidence to back you up. So this is what I'm usually sharing with my students. All right. So the next one would be the implications of good problem statement. Okay, what is the outcome if you have a good problem statement? Number one, it would set out a good blueprint for you, direction of your study. So when it comes to blueprint itself, in other words, it will become the compass for you, for you to get a direction in your study. Once you have, like a human, if you have a good problem statement, definitely, you have a problem in mind, definitely you will have questions. Why this thing happened, how this thing happened, and why, what those 7 wife and 1 husband question. Once you have this scenario, of course, you will think of what are the research objectives. How are you going to address all this problem? The same thing goes to research as well. If you have the problem, definitely you will have a research question. With the research question, then it will help you to formulate your research objective. All these processes are interrelated. All right. So good problem statement itself also help you to build a solid research model, because if you're able to question the weakness of the past studies or the limitation of the previous work, definitely this will help you to come up with the research model that somehow, some way you can contribute to the existing body of knowledge. All right. So good problem statement also give you better clarity, control, and implementations of the entire process. So you wouldn't be surprised now. Once you have a good problem statement, eventually it will have a significant impact on your methodologies, literature reviews, analysis, and so on. So like I said earlier, when it comes to the research process, right, all of the portions are integrated. So any single changes with any of the section, it will affect others. So we need to take note of that. So eventually, that is the reason why I mentioned that a good problem statement is very important to help us to guide or to motivate us to continue going forward with our research. And a good problem statement, definitely, like I said earlier, it will bring you to your research objective. Once you have a research objective, basically, it is a statement to help you to execute your study. So when it comes, sorry, it's okay. So, okay, so once you come up with your research objective, definitely you will know what are the what are the data that you're going to collect at the end of the day. So definitely when you understand the nature of the data, you will eventually decide what kind of analysis that you're going to use later on. So this is the reason why problem statement play a very important role for our entire research process. Okay, so like I said earlier, when it comes to problem statement, definitely it will bring you to a research questions. So when it comes to research question, this is quite straightforward. Like a human, once we have problem in mind, definitely we will start to asking ourselves, why this thing happened? How come this thing can happen? So all these are questions. So in research also, the same things goes. So when it comes to research question, it is a statement of the problem to be investigated. To make to make the things simple, research question usually would be a statement ended up with question mark. So when the moment you saw this this statement, then definitely you know that these are all research questions. All right, but take note of one thing. Usually, when it comes to the examination process, I only speaking on behalf of myself. All right, when I examine a thesis, usually I will look at your first chapter, which consists of your research problem, your research question, and also your problem your research objective. Ultimately, the next chapter that I look into will be your last chapter, your discussion part, and also your conclusion of your study. The reason why I skip chapter 2 and 3 and 4 for the time being is because I want to know whether did you respond to all these questions that you have been developed earlier. So this is something that you really need to take note. And most of the students, when it comes to the final chapter, they will just don't pay 110% attention. They thought that the conclusion part should be the easiest one, but eventually not. But to many of the examiner, they really take that as the significant part, because like a process, when you have the question, we want to know whether did you answer the question. So this is something that we need to take note. All right. Besides other chapters, the last chapter itself is a very significant one as well. Okay, like I said earlier, when you have a research question, definitely it will bring you to another context called research objective. So what is research objective? Research objective, basically, you're telling us what you expect to achieve from a project. For example, if let's say you want to investigate something like this, is there any relationship between price perception and buying intention, for instance? So when it comes to the research objective, you are telling us what you want to do. All right, you can do it by mentioning that to examine the relationship between price perception and buying intention. So this is more to action part. All right, so usually will be in a sentence. So ultimately, crafting a good problem statement would definitely give you something very clear when it comes to your research question and objective. All right, so I open to questions later on, because basically I just want to share what I shared earlier with all of you. It's just tips and tricks that I went through as a researcher myself. So that's how I came up with my problem statement. Basically, what I did from my side is usually based on my curiosity, observations, and also what I want to know from the research context. Anyway, if you have any question, we will reserve it at the end of our session. So, Dr. Hiram, you got anything to add? Thank you.
All good, Jason.
Yep. So I think that's all for now for the problem statement. So we will have a Q&A session later on, all right? Thank you.
Dr. Jason, yes? Yes. We will have our question and answer after your last lecture. Thank you so much. Dr. Jason, good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Yep.
Dr. Chang, good afternoon.
Yep.
We will be having our question and answer after your lecture on literature review. So
Okay,
we
sure.
may
Thank
just
you.
continue with the session. Thank you so much. Thank
Okay.
you.
Thank you.
So Jason, you want to proceed?
So should we wait for Michelle to come in?
Yes. Should we invite Miss Michelle to present some of the resources on Emerald Online?
Hello, good afternoon, everyone.
Good
Good
afternoon.
afternoon. Thank you for this opportunity for me to share my knowledge about literature review and publishing perspective as well. I do apologize if I cannot show you my video because I tried to show my video at the onset of the session earlier and then it shows poor quality internet connection. So I do apologize for that. Anyway, I'm going to share my screen. It doesn't allow me to to, sh- to show my screen. Uh,
Um,
yeah,
the, the
it won't
host will
allow
need
me.
to
Yeah,
allow
the
her to
host.
share the screen, please.
Yeah.
Michelle, can you try again?
Okay. Sorry about that.
No worries.
Okay. Can you see my screen right now?
Perfect.
Okay, good. Once again, good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for this opportunity for me to share my knowledge about literature review and also to share how our resources can definitely help to um, about your literature review. Now, I do apologize also if you cannot see me because my internet connection is really slow. By the way, that picture on your screen, that's not really scam, that's really me. So anyway, thank you so much for the insightful messages from our lecturer today. I'm gonna share to you my knowledge about how you can also um, improve your research objectives and also in a publishing perspective. Now, I've heard earlier, I just want to quote Dr. Cham earlier that he mentioned that introduction is the first part of your paper and it's very important. It's because even if you watch a movie or a series, you would check first what is the synopsis or the introduction for you to understand what is the movie all about. And that's
And
how the
Dela
research
Maria.
objective is important. So, and also the first
Dela
or the common
Maria.
questions. Hello, can you hear me?
All good, Michelle?
Okay.
Yes.
By the way, the very common questions, or not the first question that I've heard from the instructor, from your thesis, professors, and also peer reviewers, and why do you research? What motivates you, or why this topic, and what is the main objective of your paper? And very most common issue or problem is that the paper or the problem of your paper is not being identified or not certain, or the peer reviewer cannot understand what is really the main objective of your paper. That's one of the causes. Also, the paper is being rejected, aside from it is submitted to the wrong journal. So that's a very common issue also. So that's why it's very important on the first part of your paper, the introduction is needs to be firm, and also the research objective needs to be clear. I'm not really sure if you can still see my screen. Can you still see my screen?
Yep, all good.
Okay. Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Because
Yes.
it's showing on my end poor quality. Sorry about that. And I just want to emphasize also that we Emerald Publishing uh, has been advocating and championing real impact, bringing research works and research effect and output to impact our real world challenges and to bring real positive changes to our communities and social changes. Now, if you will cross reference or link your research output to an international goals, and then your research output could possibly or could make a real change in the society, community, or even to the government, then your research has a real impact. Now, I will be sharing like just two main points or examples on how you can use this method to improve your research objectives in literature review in publishing perspective. First is leveraging the Sustainable Development Goals or SDGs to your research objectives. So you need to take advantage of like this example for this international organization like United Nations SDGs. Apparently there are 17 goals under UN SDG, and if you can link your research objectives to like national policy or international goals, hence this significantly increased the weight of your research output, and also it provides a clear motivation of this question: why you do this research? And example question: why is your research is important? Your answer could be aligned to international focus objective here, right? So in Emerald, we have been championing sustainable development goals into our research journals and ebooks. So there are a number of journals currently that are calling for papers with SDGs. And if you could take a look on the screen, there are sample links in there that will route you to those journals and ebooks. So another point that could bring you or connect your research to the most recent problem that even the leading government are facing today is expert briefing. It will serve like a bridge research with society, or it could connect the dots. And if you're going to ask me why, because expert briefing will connect you to the most urgent problem that the leading government are facing today. Now, I remember, I want to quote also Dr. Jason earlier that he said that the problem statement will say, if you are a salesperson, it is like the selling point of your paper, right? And you need to have a very good problem statement that will lead to a very good aim and lead to a good question also. So this expert briefing is peer reviewed. So it's pretty similar to a newspaper. I know researchers also will cross-reference or cite newspapers and journals. This is pretty similar to newspaper, but this one is peer reviewed. And you can also cite this content. But this is trustworthy source of impartial and up-to-minute commentary, world events, and their implications for business, politics, economics, and international relations, which allow researchers to identify the most urgent problems of today. So it talks about global trends, emerging trends, development, and even up-to-minute information, and the most urgent problem that the world is facing today. So the main difference between the newspapers and these are more in insights, and this is peer reviewed, right? And it has analysis. Now I'm going to show you later on how does it look like because it also includes analysis, introduction. Now on analysis, in the analysis part, it could help you understand what is really the real implication of this certain problem, of this certain insight. And this expert briefing is really good for researchers because aside from you can cite, whenever you pull up keywords or expert briefing in our platform, it could also bring up some related articles and ebooks, right? And expert briefing is owned by Oxford Analytica. So we have partnered Oxford Analytica. They are an independent geopolitical company or advisory firm that will provide advices to a policy body, corporate brands about operations, businesses, and decisions also. So it was inspired to provide insights or daily insights and reports or news to the president of the USA, Richard Nixon. He was the 36th vice president in the United States, and he became the 37th president of the United States. So it was inspired to provide daily news or insights to the president. So if you will cross-reference or connect your research with this, basically it would also connect you to the most urgent problem that the leading government are facing today. And you have the same access that the other high-ranking official global bodies have information also has access to. So how is it being sourced? So if you could take a look on the screen, this is peer-reviewed by the group of experts. So it is sourced on the ground, research studies, databases, broadcasters, news media, official sources, social media, periodicals and papers, legal and regulatory data. This is how is it being sourced. So there's really like no fake news. And it will be assessed, evaluated by the group of experts, actually over 1,500 academics, for former policymakers, regulators, and industry leaders. So this is the second step on how it is being assessed by the group of experts. So it's really peer reviewed. Now, another thing, it is unbiased and trustworthy because the author is not being identified for security and confidentiality also, because for in order for the author to have freedom to express, to talk all the facts and the entire truth without thinking the consequences. So that's why there is no author. The author is being protected. And why expert briefing linked to your research? Because you can also cite in research, these are the researchers citing Oxford Analytica. And once again, if you will pull up or if you will search expert briefing or insights in our platform, it could also bring up some related articles and ebooks. And why would this be valuable to a university? If you are a researcher at the same time you are a professor in an academic institution, it can be used also as a lecture or a teaching material because it talks about the global trends, emerging trends, developments, and even up-to-minute information that is timely and relevant. So it could make the classroom more lively and participative because it talks about the most common issue in the world. So that's why it's also applicable as a teaching material. For research, you can also cite expert briefing, and it has analysis. So this is an example of an expert briefing infographic. If you could take a look, there are some icons right here. So this is an example of infographic. Another one example of infographic, this one, this is from the concern over death penalty will grow in Asia. So if you could take a look, Philippines, it's blue. So death penalty abolished. But there is a possibility. There are several bills have been filed in the House of Representatives and Senate to restore the death penalty. So with by looking at the infographic, it's there's a lot of information that you can get, right? And next content part of an expert briefing that could be useful also with your paper is the daily briefing or the daily insights. Why it's important? Because it has introduction, significance, analysis, which will help you understand what is really the real implication of this certain information. There is also a background and different views or discussion and collaboration part, and there is conclusion and suggestion. So this is how it looks like, and you can also cross-reference or cite this content. So I'm not gonna push through on that. Another example of expert briefing is the executive summary or the short version. This is something to do about U.S. President's order will shake online media about Trump on social media, Twitter. So this is updated Friday, May 29, 2020. And when I checked out our platform, there are a lot of interesting topics about Philippines. In Asia, I think the contents of expert briefings, Philippines is a second to Japan. So it means there are a lot of interesting topics about the government, economics, financial aspects in the Philippines. So this one is another example of daily briefing or daily insights. For example, COVID-19 fallout will not hurt Philippine president. So there is also part here analysis and discussion. So this is an example of daily insight or daily briefing. And before I let you go, this is just quick because I know that you still have like Q&A portion later on. We can provide a free trial for our expert briefing. You can just contact me on that details that you can see on your screen. We can provide a 15 to 30 days so that you can actually explore our platform, because you cannot find our expert briefing anywhere else. So you can find it in our platform, and then we can give a 30 days free trial so that you can actually explore the actual contents in our platform. And once again, before I let you go, before I'm going to thank you, I want to emphasize also that, because I remember I want to quote Dr. Hiram also, that you do not get discouraged, because if you've a lot of mistakes, if your papers get rejected because you've learned from your mistakes, in a publisher's perspective also, do not get discouraged, because your paper will get better and better eventually, and you've learned from your from the revision, right? So don't get discouraged immediately. Just remember the 4 R's: read and read and read. Second, read and read again. Third, read and analyze, and read and synthesize. Thank you so much for this opportunity, everyone. And back to you, Jason. Thank you.
Thank you, Michelle. All right, everyone. Okay, let's continue with literature review. Oops. All right. Okay, what is literature review? Okay, literature review is one of the most important parts in your research process. We cannot deny that when it comes to your thesis write-up or dissertation, you call in some of your institution, literature review is a must. What is actually literature review? Is basically you are trying to explain a particular phenomenon. All right. The main purpose is to convey to the readers about the work already done and the knowledge and ideas that have been already established on a particular topic or research. Basically, to me, it's like a storytelling, because most of us, when we have our own research model, definitely you will have all the construct or concept in your model. Am I right? So when you have all this construct, definitely you need to explain how this construct being developed from the past and why is the position today. Okay. At the same time, literature review also is a section that you need to create. You need to include the underpinning theory that you use for your study. So literature review also focus on a specific topic of your interest. When you want to come up with something related to your area, make sure that whatever you review must be closely related to what you are doing. All right. And literature review is something that you can publish and stand alone as a paper. For example, you can actually download a journal article that only focus solely on literature review, or some of them they are using more advanced technique. For example, like systematic literature review is part of the methodology process, whereby a researcher you use certain technique to do the literature review process and make it publish. So the ultimate goal is they want to convey what is happening from the past until the current situations, and what are the gist that you can extract out of it. Okay, a good literature review, definitely you must have all these things. Okay, first of all, you must introduce the relevant terminology and provide the definition for it. For example, if one of my construct that I use in my study is service quality, definitely the first part of my literature review, I will define, okay, I will come up with the definition of service quality. All right, so basically you can put quite numbers of definition for the construct that you want to discuss, but eventually at the end of the day, you must tell us which one or which of the definition that you use for your study. All right, the 1 million question will always be this, you know, a lot of my students will ask me, can I really come up with my own definition? The answer to this question is yes, if and only if the literature that you review none of it can really apply to the context of your study, then you can consider to come up with your own definition. Nothing wrong with that. Okay, so the good LR also provide you a historical background of your research. Okay, so for example, if I talk about service quality, definitely I need to quote on somebody. For example, Professor Parasuraman, because he is the father of service quality. So definitely I need to quote on his in many of the studies and how it relate to my studies. Okay, basically a good literature review will provide you overview of your current context. Okay, in this case, for example, if I focus on medical tourism, I need to review the literature that are closely associated with the area that I study. So at least when the readers read it, they can straight away relate to what I'm doing. If, for example, if I'm looking at service quality in a hospitality context, but I'm I review in my literature review is some from other contexts. For example, in other retail contexts, it might be different because retail context, the way they operate and the way people carry out business in hospitality is quite different in terms of the nature. All right. So a good LR also provide relevant theories and concepts that you use for your study. And it also shows us how you can extend or challenge the existing gap that you identified in your problem statement. All right. So literature review also provide you a supporting evidence because whatever you want to claim or you want to put forward, definitely when it comes to your LR, you need to give us all the evidences. By using all the evidences as a support, God willing, no one really can challenge you or question you when it comes to your argument. All right. So they are step by step to do literature review because I cannot emphasize enough that all of us will have the standardized way of writing your literature review because some of you might come from a different area. For example, those who are using qualitative in particular, the way you write your literature review might be different from us in the quantitative. Okay, for those who are from an economic background, the way you write literature review definitely will be different again. So ultimately, I try to be as general as possible. But when it comes to the common way of addressing literature review, the first thing that you need to do is always decide on the topic. Like what Dr. Harams shared with us earlier. So how you derive all this topic. So don't worry, I have 6 points that I'm going to discuss. I'll go into one by one now. Okay, first of all, decide on a topic. Beside what Dr. Haram said, what you can also use this so-called funneling effect, whereby you can actually go on a very general area, broad area, then only you start to focus on what you try to do. Okay, for example, my study is in medical tourism because before I jump straight away to medical tourism, I need to go to general service context. I need to understand what is happening in the general service context before I can link the construct that I want to include in my study into the medical tourism context. You see, this is how it flows. The moment when the reader or examiner read your work, they know you have a good foundations, okay, a good benchmarking before you include it in the context of your study. All right. So next, you must know how to identify the data and the resources that you're going to review. So as usual, as academic, usually we would suggest to our students and also researchers, our peers, friends as a researcher, to look at academic journals. The reason is because academic journals carry more weightage, particularly the research papers. All right. So of course, you can use newspaper, you can use professional magazines, for some of the statistics, doesn't matter. But ultimately, I would suggest that academic journals articles are more relevant when it comes to your literature review, in the sense that they eventually can tell you more. Because literature review, they will tell you what's happened in the past and they will lead the discussion to what happened in the current situations. So it will help you to understand the situation better. And another question is, some of you will ask me, Cham, can I refer to past theses that have been done by my friends or the one that I download from internet? The answer, I leave it to you. There is no answer for it, but sometimes to me, thesis is a good document for us to refer to because When a person published the thesis, meaning to say that the person already graduated from the program, whatever they written in their literature review, in fact, you can see the way they write, they will address all the historical part, all the things that happened with that particular theory that we adopted. So their writing is are more detailed compared to academic journal. The reason being is because academic journals, we have limitation of words. Usually, for example, some of the journal article, they only give you like maximum 7,000 words, 8,000 words. That is the reason why researchers, for those who publish their journal article, they do not have that privilege to put more information in their literature review section. So that is the reason why you can actually look at thesis just for understanding purpose. But of course, many of the supervisors and many of the examiners will not suggest you to cite the thesis because thesis is just examined by few individuals, but we do not know to what extent it has already been accepted, the idea being accepted by senior professors and so on, because most of the journal article, right, they go through a double-blind process. It is more rigid in that sense compared to thesis that who usually the examiner would be the examiner will come from the recommendation of your supervisor. And this is one of the thoughts, one of the issue that usually we tell our student to read thesis, you can get some idea. On the other hand, you also need to understand the risk associated with it. But this one, I leave it to you, just for learning purpose, all right? Okay, so databases, I do believe that you all know what we have here, Emerald, Science Direct, Sage Journals, all these are the publishers for academic journals. Okay, you can download it, understand it, all the papers, because most of the paper that publish with the good publisher usually will be double-blind review, and they already gone through a certain process that eventually make the paper publishable. All right, so next, as a researcher, you need to analyze the literature as well. So I believe that many of us, we read a lot of articles, but the problem here is this: when you read a lot, whatever you read last week, you might forget. You might forget the content of the article, because in the process of 7 days, after your last reading, you might, you are busy with some other things, you forgot what is the content. So if possible, when you do the analysis on the literature, try to work or try to use this so-called literature review metrics, which I'm going to talk about later on. So you need to take notes of several key aspects. For example, the title, the key statistic, all right, the methodology used in the paper. You must also elaborate, or you must also evaluate the strengths and weaknesses of the journal article that you read. And also you must look at the relationship among study, how it actually can be categorized, can be clustered with other journals. And all this part, after you've gone through all this process of analysis, you won't be surprised that at the end of the day, you will see the directions of how people write their literature review. Okay, there is no, sorry to say that I cannot teach you how to write literature review, because to me, as an individual, I learned how to write literature review is based on reading. The more you read, you will learn the art of writing. Okay, you can see how people put forward their case and how they argue it when it comes to the storytelling part. That is the reason why I have to quote what I say earlier, is writing is always an art. Okay, it's quite difficult for us to put it in a scientific way. All right. All right, ladies and gentlemen, this is what I mean by this literature review map. So every single article that you read, if possible, please try to categorize in such a way. Okay, so eventually you never know, you can find a lot of new things from the document that you're coming out with, particularly the literature review metrics. Okay, and a lot of researcher like my friend who has been actively used this thing in his research, he can find in the problem statement, he can easily identify the theory that he used in his study, and the ultimate things is he able to get citation easily based on the area that he venturing into, simply because he already have these metrics, which is the summary of all the journals that he have read. Okay, so when some of the PhD students told you that I have read, like for example, 5,000 articles, meaning to say that there are 5,000 row for their documents. So ultimately, when it comes to their writing, this is the weapon. Okay, so it will facilitate the entire writing process. Otherwise, you need to download all the journals again, and you need to read and you rewrite. Or you're using this method. This method is more user-friendly compared to the traditional way of writing. You know, traditional, whenever we want to start a new research, then we have to download journals, read, and write. You know, it's going to take times. So if you already have this literature review metrics, God willing, your life will be more easier in the sense that you can easily find all the information that you need. All right, the next thing is writing the review. Okay, usually I would suggest that when it comes to the writing part, try to go from general to specific issue. Okay, you must start with the broad area. You, like for example, if your study is focused in particularly in a hotel industry context, we don't actually straight away jump to hotel industry. Okay, before you go straight away to hotel industry, it would be great for you to explain to us what is the nature of general service context. You see, and then you lead your discussion to hospitality context. You know, hospitality consists of hotels and others. Then only then we move on to your hotel context. Can you see the funneling effect or not? Put yourself in the shoes as a reader. The moment when they read your work, they follow your flow, it will be very, very comfortable for them to read and to understand. Remember, understand is the keyword that you try to sell. Okay, you must make sure that the reader understand what you're trying to say. Otherwise, if you go for examination, you just put everything in the document without strategize it, definitely your supervisor or your examiner will come back to you with a lot of comments. So this is something that you really need to consider. All right. The third point would be distinguish between your research finding and other source of information. Like I said earlier, journals, newspaper articles, depends on you. Okay. The key material that I usually use would be journal articles, academic journal articles. And also newspaper in the sense that if I need certain statistic, particularly in my area, for example, medical tourism, if I would like to convince my reader about the worth of this industry, then I need to cite on newspaper because newspaper, when the minister, they come out with the statistic, they report that how big is the industry, then I cite from there directly. The reason is to convince the reader that why my study need to be conducted simply because this medical tourism is very huge in Malaysia context. And that is how we are using some other resources to back up our literature review. Okay, so definitely you must also indicate why certain studies are important. As a research students or for those very experienced researcher or the novice researcher, I believe that most of us, we have anchor articles for the project that we are embarking into. Okay, anchor articles means that the strongest or the most influential articles that you have, that you depends on to start your research project. So you wouldn't be surprised, when it comes to a viva voce, a process in order defense for some of the PhD student, you wouldn't be surprised some of the examiner will ask you a very simple question such as, can you please tell me 3 of the main articles that you refer to for your entire research? Very simple question. If you couldn't recall, meaning to say that you don't have the foundation in terms of the journal that you refer to. So this is very risky, and you won't be surprised the trend as a head of program for this PhD and MPhil, I also participate in examination process for other university. I also noticed that a lot of examiners tend to ask simple questions as well. For example, they will ask you something like, what is your research paradigm in your study? The meaning of research paradigm is basically your research philosophy, but the way they ask it, it can actually too simple until it would be able to kill the students, because some of the students, to them, they only know research philosophy. They never learn about research paradigm. When such question being asked, then they do not know what to answer. The moment when they do not know what to answer, then they started to get panic. So the moment the panic disorder start, then you can see a lot of questions will be follow up. So that's how that's why I say understanding the nature of your work is extremely important. Okay, so the next would be point number 5. If let's say your literature review are more focused on, like for example, economy or finance context, right? Usually this group of researcher will usually question the timeliness of the topic. So you are talking about years, you're talking about certain weeks, for example, then you really need to highlight it very, very clearly, for the reason that if you choose only, for example, from 2000 to 2010, why you choose within this area? Why not after that? So you need to justify. Remember the word justify. All these things, you must really structure it, strategize it, then only you write it. All right. So next thing, the next point would be discuss other literature review on your topic from other areas, like what I mentioned earlier. Before you jump straight away, for example, if your area is in hotel industry, before you go to hotel industry, it would be great for you to look at others areas as well. For example, general service context, hospitality context, then only we come to hotel industry in particular. So this is something that you need to consider. The next would be avoid long list of non-specific references. Okay, this is very common among researchers. The reason is because there are two possible reasons. Number one is to increase the number of page. Number two, to increase numbers of words. So you have to take note of one thing. You see, I'm not sure whether you came across this type of writing before. Some of the researcher, right, they will only come up with one statement. For example, there is a relationship between A and B, full stop. But the reference that they give is easily go to 4 line or 5 line. All right. To me, it's a redundancy. To me, when I look at it, it's like you're trying to tell me that you try to tell me that you are very good in reviewing the literature, but you dump everything inside without telling me why you only choose all this, or by including all this. I would appreciate as an examiner if you only highlight to me the most significant one, and the most recent one, for example, within the past 5 years. And that is good enough. Otherwise, if you put yourself in the shoes of the reader, you just read a sentence, but the reference is so long, then you have to move to another paragraph. The idea that you want to get from the paper is just limited, but the reference, everything is covered by the references. All right, next thing is, okay, you cite on the relevant references. Okay, this one you must do it seriously, in a sense that the moment when you read, please cite accordingly. Many of us, when we write, we will tell ourselves, doesn't matter, I will write first. Later, I only find the reference. Okay, the challenging part here is this: when you after your writing, if you forgot some of the citation, right, it could, some people like me, for example, experience many times. Okay, when I write, I tend to put the references aside. So right after my completion of my writing, then only I look for references. You won't be surprised, some of the reference I couldn't find. It takes me about sometimes 1 day to 2 days just to find that particular reference, just simply because I did not cite it earlier. So it's a matter of you do it now or you do it later. To me, I would suggest to you, based on my humble little experience, please do it while you're writing. Okay? So whenever you cite in your writing, please get the full citation as well. All right, next would be strategies and tips. Number one, you cannot run away from strategies, okay, and planning. Okay, like what I said earlier, immediately document and cite the source that you took the information from. For those who are depending on online sources, okay, please bookmark all the URL, all right? So if you're using any hard copy, please make sure that you have for example, you can consider to use these post-it notes on that particular hard copy, all right, so that you know where to refer to when you need to go back to that particular point. And most importantly, please use this transition sentence. What I mean transition sentence is like, if you discuss something, for example, a construct A, like for example, service quality, all right? Until the end of the discussion, please put in a transition sentence. Transition sentence means that you are informing your reader what they can expect from you in the coming section. At least they know the directions of your writing. And many of the researchers, they don't use transition sentence, meaning to say that when they come to the end of service quality, they just stop. Then they jump to the next part, maybe satisfaction. You see, you leave the thing hanging. And then it's not, I mean, to me as a reader, I don't really like to read that kind of works. I would prefer if the authors or the writers can tell me what can I expect from the next section so that I can follow your storyline closely. This is very important. It's a matter of psychology, strategize, and plan. All right. Okay, the next, it depends on some universities. For example, like my university in Malaysia, most of us from social science background, we will use EPA referencing. Pay attention on it, and please do it as early as possible, like what I mentioned earlier. If not, later on, you need to spend a lot of time to address this particular matter. All right. So what not to do? This is very important, something for you to consider. Don't just read a lot, then cut and paste. Okay, this is very dangerous. The moment you cut and paste, of course, you will know we will use Turnitin software. You know, some of the journal article, they will use other software to detect any plagiarism happen or not. All right. Number two is don't just provide information from article, because sometimes I know that after you reading some of the article, you want certain portion of the writing. You think that their writing is good. But the problem here is this: when you use this idea into your study, but you are not relating to your context of your study. And this is the issue. So if you want to use the idea from other works, but you must relate it back to what you are doing, so that when the examiner or the reviewer look at your work, they can relate to what you are doing. That is the ultimate goal. Okay. Third thing is don't just accept everything from the articles, because some of the things is not necessarily applicable to our context, particularly, when you're doing something related to cultural study. Okay. So for instance, one of my paper that I did before, I make a comparison between Westerners and also Asians. The way we look at things are different. All right, because of our cultural background. Because if this paper is published in a Western context, whatever they argue might not necessarily applicable or can be replicated to our Asian context. All right, because of the cultural difference. And you see, the fourth point, I emphasize again, don't take citation for granted. And most importantly, don't assume your supervisor to know everything, because most of the supervision, the supervisor learn from you as a student, as a research student. So it is your responsibility to keep your supervisor informed. So the way you write, you must treat them like they know nothing about your area. Okay, this is how you can convince them that you really review and you put it in the way that every single reader who are not researcher also understand what you try to bring forward. Okay, so just a quick one, because earlier on I've been understood that some of you are doing your MBA study, right? So let me share something with all of you. Okay, so when it comes to the literature review for MBA program, there are two ways of writing. Okay, there are two methods. Number one is a conventional way of doing it, whereby you will have your literature review and you will develop hypothesis at the same time. Please pardon me for my bad writing. At the same time. Okay, for example, you discuss about something, the construct, then you hypothesize the relationship. The second approach is whereby you will have two chapters for your literature review. The first chapter would be your literature review, and the subsequent chapter, we call it chapter 3, would be your hypothesis development. Thesis development, meaning to say that you split it into two. All right. Okay. There is no right or wrong for these two methods, but if you go with the first one, okay, if you go with the first method, you really need to strategize your writing, particularly when you try to address some of your research model. For instance, if your model is something like this 1, 2, 3, just consider this 1, 2, 3 as your IV. This 4 is your DV. Another one would be the fifth. Just assume that this is your model. So when you start your using the first method, definitely we do expect you to have the theoretical background as the initial section. So this is the part that you need to strategize. I would suggest you not to straight away discuss number one, because if you discuss the number 1, 2, and 3, you definitely cannot hypothesize yet. Simply because as a reader, you haven't introduced number 4 to me. So in this case, I would suggest you need to discuss the 4 first. Okay, the 4th, then only you talk about number 1. So the moment you go with number 1, then you can hypothesize, because you already introduced number 4 to me. Am I right? So we go on with number 2 and number 3, and last number 5, then we do the hypothesis. For the second method is what I usually suggested to my student. But anyway, 1 and 2 is all depends on your university format. Okay, just go with the university format and also the approval of your supervisor. Why I usually ask my students to go with method number 2 is simply because for this literature review, you only focus on all these concepts. Beside the theory, you talk about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You do not need to bother how the hypothesis is being developed. You just tell me everything that you know about 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. And also, of course, the theory of the study that you use. Okay, then you will have the subsequent chapter. And this subsequent chapter, you only focus on hypothesis development. All right? Only for hypothesis. So your discussion would be more easier, because here you can straight away start 1 to 4. Okay, for example, the relationship to 1 to 4, then you do your discussion. This is the method that I noticed that it would be more easier for the researcher, particularly for those who are doing their coursework MBA program, then easier for them to write. So method number 1 is a conventional way, but please take note, if you want to use it, you have to strategize the flow of the storyline. Okay, so I hope that I'm covered everything. Hold on.
Dr.
So
Chab?
yeah, any questions so far? Thank you. Back
Yes,
to
yes,
you.
yes, Dr. Chab. Thank you very much for that